Hello and welcome to this very special show on NewsX. Who is winning this elections in Karnataka? And in that pursuit, we do these special shows about issues, about people, about communities. And today's topic is the Lingayats and Veerashaivas, past, present, and future. A big community in Karnataka, which is, you can call them as the biggest community in about 14 to 17%. We don't have definite numbers there. 14 to 17% or 18% is also sometimes quoted. They are the biggest voters, and for almost 2.5 decades, they have been a decisive factor as to which political party comes to power. But there's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of curiosity also as to what this community is about. Where did this community come from? Their origin, their history, their prominence. And to discuss that, I have with me very learned, literate, retired IS officer who has been Additional Chief Secretary of Government of Karnataka, SM Jamdar. Sir, thank you so much for joining NewsX and especially this topic. The reason why Jamdar is with us is because he was also involved in some movements. He has done research work and he comes from the same community. Sir, in brief, what is Lingayat and what is Veerashaiva? Yeah.
Basically, Lingayat and Veerashaiva share a few things in common. But the original faith, which originated in 12th century, is Lingayat, not Veerashaiva. And if you want to contrast the two, Lingayat is not Sanatana, is a non-Vedic faith, whereas Veerashaiva is part of Vedic philosophy and they believe in Vedas, Agamas, Puranas, Shastras and all that, whereas Lingayats reject all of them wholesale. That was the starting point in the 12th century, which totally broke up all the traditions from the traditions of the Sanatana Dharma. And the whole system which built up was on that basis by another very famous man by name Basavanna. He is himself a Brahmin, a Shaiva Brahmin. But he rejected Brahmanya itself. He just tore away the Yajnopavita in the childhood when that was being performed and came out of that retreat. And he studied for up to his age of 22 years in an Agrahara in a holy place today famous for his name, Kudala Sangama, is in Hungun Taluk of Bagalkot district. And that place's name is also his pen name. And all his vachanas. Vachana is the equivalent of Sanskrit shlokas. These are not just religious shlokas. They have in them the contents vary from religious, spiritual, to economic, political, social, and also political. Basically, largely political also.
So the Lingayat community precedes Basavanna?
No, that is exactly the argument between Veerashaiva and Lingayat. Lingayats, the whole religion got started in 12th century. It did not exist before. And Veerashaiva, they claim they were there before. In the sense, it's not true, but they can claim that lineage from Shaivism, of Hindu Shaivism. Hindu Shaivism, you can say, comes in two brands. Agamika, that's a Dravidian origin from South India, or maybe Harappa Manjudaro. Whereas Aryan origin, that's a Shrotriya Shaiva. The Shrotriya Shaiva is Aryan and it came from north to the south. Whereas the Dravidian origin is from south. There are theories stating that Dravidians were pushed down by the invading Aryans, and that's how the Dravidian culture became the Harappa Mohenjo-daro prototype here. So that Agamika Shaivism and Shrotriya Shaivism, which is Vedic Shaivism, are totally two different branches. But that's Shaivism. If at all, there is no evidence to their claim, but they are making false claims. They say they were ancient, that ancient root can only be Shaivism. Whereas Lingayats, they worship Shiva. The concept of Shiva is totally different. You can ask me what is different. The Lingayata Shiva is invisible. Lingayat Shiva is formless. Lingayat Shiva has no gender. He is neither man nor woman. And Lingayat Shiva is not the Shiva described in Shiva Puranas. As you know, there are 6 Shiva Puranas. Linga Purana, Shiva Purana, Skanda Purana. All those Puranas describe some 1,000 forms of Shiva. And Basavana and the Sharanas, his followers, reject all those contentions wholesale. So from that point of view, this is not what is described in Puranas and Veda. So the Shiva does not appear in Rig Veda. Okay, and Shiva appears at all, if at all he appears in the Krishna Yajurveda, second half of Yajurveda, third Veda. Shiva appears there. Until that time, Shiva is not a Vedic figure. Rigveda and Samaveda, they don't have Shiva's name itself. Nor was Vishnu, nor was Mahesha. Okay, they were later inventions of Puranas and Upanishads. Okay, but they were not Vedic in that sense. So, from that sense of perspective, you can say Shaivism of the Hindu type is not part of Lingayat thing. So, this and then Lingayatism believes in only one God. The name may be Shiva's, need not be Shiva's, because each Sharana, there were some 238 of them who have written vachanas, which are available, which are published 3 times by the government of Karnataka itself. So these people use only one God, one name. The names need not be Shiva. One of the very prominent Vachanakara, the follower of Basavana, or a contemporary Basavana, senior to Basavana, was one Jeda Radhasimaya. He uses the word Ramanatha. Another man uses the word Guheshwara, but Ishvara is part of that. Ramanatha, unless you say Natha is part of a kind of Shaivism, yes. Ramanatha is a Vaishnava name. So, Mallikarjuna, different pen names they have written in their thing, but only one God. Unlike plural, the polytheism of Hindu type, the Lingayats are only a worshipper of single God, monotheistic.
So, the prophecies, how did it come, sir? Is it just Basavana who put forth these ideas?
Exactly. You see, exactly. His whole intention was not to establish a religion. His whole thing was that social reform. He was a born Brahmin. He did not like quite a few things in the Brahmanical tradition and rituals. He rejected the ritual karma kanda of that. And he also revolted against every belief, every practice, particularly untouchability, and then no equality for women, child marriage, widow remarriage prohibition, all such things he totally opposed. And
so he was a social reformer.
He began as a social reformer. But his reform became an extreme case when he said he totally rejected Varnashrama Dharma. And then he said all men and women are equal, all human beings are equal, and Varnashrama Dharma is contrary to that, so it must be abolished. And he abolished. He was not just a Brahmin preacher, he was a prime minister, mind you. See, this was he began his reform movement sometime in 1140. It ended in 1167. It was all this happened during a period of some 25-27 years only. And about his date of birth, though there are minor variations, it is the first decade of 11th century. And his end is sometime the 1160s, late 60s.
Late 60s. So he lived for about 5 decades.
Around nearly 6 decades. Okay. Around 6 decades. So during that time he was able to achieve that. And he rose to become, first he was an accountant. Then he became finance minister. Then he became prime minister. That prime ministership was during the Kalachuri takeover of the Chalukyan imperial throne in Basav Kalyan. These are Western Chalukyas. Okay. Not the early Chalukyas of Badami. Yeah. And Western Chalukyas ruled about nearly half of India, including Gujarat, Maharashtra, Orissa, entire Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, parts of Tamil Nadu. They were part of their empire. So in that empire, the last the emperor by name Taila III, Tailapa III, was very weak, and his nephew took over, and he subdued him, removed him, he usurped the throne. And that his dynasty also did not last longer. All this took place, all these movements took place during his time. He was a ruler. And he was very fond of Basavana and gave him full free hand, the support to spread these thoughts. Because unlike most people's belief, Vijayala was not a Jaina, Chalukyas or Jains. Vijayala was a Shaiva. Vijayala means the man, Kalachuri king who usurped that. Kalachuris are basically immigrants from Madhya Pradesh. You see, your Bahubali cinema you might have seen.
Yes.
There they use these words, Vijayala Deva, and there is a Mahishmati. This is exactly the place where Kalachuri dynasty originated and branched off into different, 2-3 branches. One branch came to south, other went in the central India, another went to north. So one that came to south established blood relations with the ruling families because it's an ancient dynasty, so small one. And that's how they were able to establish blood relations by offering their girls, marrying the girls from Chalukyan family. So using that proximity, blood relationship and close relation with Chalukya, he undid the Chalukyas. That was virtually end of it. And during that time, Basavana became the prime minister of Imperial Chalukyas, a Western Kalyan.
So he was an administrator too.
Yeah, he was the chief administrator. You can say prime minister, Mahamantri. The words used are Mahamantri. Earlier, Dandadipa means the defense minister.
Commander.
Yeah, commander-in-chief or defense minister. But he also became Mahamantri. So he used his clout as prime minister, his background as Brahmin, also as a highly learned man, well-versed in all the Puranas.
If the principles and the philosophy was very strong, how did Veerashaivas and Lingayat came together?
Oh, that was a much later addition. See, this Lingayat, original Lingayat, which originated as a separate faith, came to an abrupt end during the lifetime of Basavana. When he arranged the wedding of a Brahmin girl with the boy of a chamar, the cobbler, they accused him of Varna Sankara, polluting the Sanatana Dharma. And all the Brahmins rose against him. They went and told so many horrible stories to the king, and king had to protect him. He was an usurper. He had to take care of his own throne first because he had so many political enemies, and he could not try to antagonize the society. So he sided with the vested interests and the powerful elements in Sanatana Dharma, and he removed Basavana and punished the girl and the boy by death, by trampling them under the feet of the elephants. He gouged out the eyes of the parents of the boy, a cobbler. And thereafter, at that moment, the revolution took place and the royal forces rose against this action. The king was murdered. Because of the murder of king or some violence towards the royal family, all royal, the military or the army, which was of the royal family, they rose against the followers of Basavana, nearly 1.5 lakh people, 1,97,000 people who were his followers. There it's in capital itself. So it was a city of about 3 lakh people that time. So according to records. And then this 1,96,000 or nearly 2 lakh people were his followers. Out of nearly about 10 to 20,000 people were butchered, and he was banished from the empire. So there, totally it came to an abrupt end. After that, like Christianity.
So what happened to Basavana, sir?
Basavana himself, after he was banished, he came back to where he left from, Kurla Sangma. And within a short while, about few months, he expired. Natural death only. He expired. So after that, next 200 years, whole faith was hibernating. All the people who ran away from there, they were quietly doing their work of spreading the religion. It is just like Christianity after Christ's execution, that is, crucifixion. And then it went underground until about 313, when Constantine made it.
He revived it.
Revived it, and then the edict of Milan allowed them to practice Christianity for 300 years. This is 200 years. That was revived. During this time it was underground, but it was spreading quietly because his principles were universal. Equality to women, castelessness. So most of the people who joined him were people from the lower caste. people from lower caste. Also, learned people who understood his logic, his philosophy, joined him. Of them, they were Brahmins. It is the Brahmins who joined him who were doing much better in spreading the religion. After 200 years, in the between 1422 and 1486, during these 64 years, the Vijayanagar kings of the first dynasty Sangama, Vijayanagar was ruled by 4 dynasties.
Right.
The founding dynasty was Sangamas, who ruled for 150 years. During this time, the last 3 kings of Sangama dynasty, for a period of nearly 100 years, about 65, 70 years, were Lingayats. They were converted to Lingayatam, just like King Constantine's mother was converted to Christianity, and he became soft and then allowed them to practice. Just like that, Pravdadevaraya, Mallikarjuna, Virupakshi, 3 emperors of Vijayanagar Empire got converted to Lingayatism. Under their royal patronage, all these underground activities came to the fore. And all the lost literature which had gone underground was collected, and the religious books began to be written in the 15th century. So Lingayat religion was revived by the Vijayanagar Empire in the 15th century.
Did it also get modified?
No, that's where I come. That's where I'm come. Next step is that, not immediately. So during this time, after the fall of Vijayanagara in 1565, the battle of Talikota, after it was disintegrated and Muslims took over, then the many petty rulers like what I could call Palegars.
Yes.
They are petty chieftains in Israel.
Yeah.
Many of them are Lingayats. And of them, main Lingayats were rulers of Keladi, rulers of Kurga, rulers of Mysore, rulers of Punganur in Andhra Pradesh. Nearly a dozen or more small chieftains also had become Lingayat during the imperial period, because emperors were Lingayats, and these followers became Lingayat. Mysore Maharajas from 14th, 15th century until 1610 were Lingayats. Lingayats
The Wadiyars.
Wadiyars. And you can read B.L. Rice on that, History of Mysore. And there's one person, Nanjaraj Aras, who gives frequent interviews. You can talk to him. Even today, cooks in Mysore Palace are Lingayats. The priests are Brahmins, but cooks are Lingayats, even today. So that is a tradition, very strangely. So that under the royal patronage and then after it is scattered, it is these chieftains, Palegars, who spread the Lingayat religion. Maharajas of Kurga, who were defeated by the British in 1834, were Lingayats for 300 years. And Keladi rulers for nearly 300 years were Lingayats. Punganuru in Chitturu district were Lingayats. There are so many kingdoms like Kitturu, Channamma, Belvadi, Mallama, I told you. They were all Lingayats. These are small kings who ruled for 200 years, 300 years. So they were Lingayats. Because of that, it took very strong and wide roots in the society in these 3 states. There's Karnataka, Maharashtra, Telangana, and Andhra Pradesh. You have sizable number of Lingayats, but largest number is Karnataka.
What constituted a Lingayat, sir?
Lingayat is nothing but the practice what Basavana taught them, namely castelessness. The anti-varnashrama dharma. So if you take the rituals of death, rituals at marriage, rituals at betrothal, various, the pregnant woman, or naming, totally non-Vedic. If you want me to explain as a practicing Lingayat, I can tell you. In Lingayat wedding, there is no Saptapadi. There is no Agni Sakshi. Okay, instead there is water. Okay, and Lingayats never burn their bodies. The dead. This is buried, not just buried, is buried in a sitting pose, fully naked, keeping that what you call Ishtalinga in the left palm. So that he came naked into the world, he has to go back naked into the next life. That's it. And one more thing, Lingayats don't believe in karma. Lingayats don't believe in rebirth. Lingayats don't believe in the existence of Swarga and Naraka. So for them, Swarga, Naraka and Moksha, they are in one life, and this life, here and now. Once you die, body disintegrates, life merges with God. That God they called Bayalu, void. This can be similar to Buddhism, but not identical. Buddhism, Bayalu, the void Siddhanta is a negative one. Here it's a positive one. Okay, you came from the void, you entered the void. As simple as that. So God is that way very abstract concept here.
Okay.
Now, here comes a difference. The Vijayashaivas worship idol of Shiva and Nandi kept in the temples.
Right.
Lingayats don't. You should not worship idols. On the contrary, Lingayats, soon after they are given Diksha, the initiation, they are given a small miniature linga. This is not linga you have seen elsewhere. This linga is nothing but a spherical, small 1 inch, 1 cubic inch, earth, half earth kind of picture. Nothing but it signifies, symbolizes the universe. And that is Shiva.
That's what you call Ishtalinga.
Ishtalinga. Okay. And that is to be worn on your body from the day of initiation, that is the 13th day of birth, until you die. Therefore, that linga is kept in the palm of the dead person, even in the grave, and he is buried in the sitting pose holding the linga. So this is where you are not supposed to go to pujari, no intermediation, directly link between God and man is direct.
Yes.
And no hell, no heaven, no rebirth.
Okay.
And you attain moksha, that is, you become one with moksha, means become one with God soon after you die.
Where did it get modified? So how did the
that's
Veerashaiva
where,
came?
yes, this is after 15th century. The so-called Brahmanical converts to Lingayatism during Vijayanagar period.
Okay.
Because there were a large number of Brahmins who were in the administration of Vijayanagara, they got attracted to this philosophy. They joined in large numbers. And who are they? They are Aradhya Shaiva Brahmins of Andhra Pradesh. You know, P.B. Balasubramanian.
Yeah.
What is this?
S.K. Balasubramanian. P.B. Srinivas.
P.B. Balasubramanian.
Yeah.
Balasubramanian. He is Aradhya Shaiva Brahmin. And you go to Andhra Pradesh even today, you talk to Aradhya Shaiva Brahmins, they do this Srilinga business. And they learnt it from there. But unfortunately, they do both. Veerashaivas also do both. They also carry Vishalinga and they do the Stavaralinga. This is the idols kept in the temple. Okay. That is, they could not give up Yajnopavita. They brought it back. Baswana threw it away. But they brought it back. And they also wanted to go to temples, so they started doing puja of idols. They started bringing back quite a few concepts of Vedic practices
so
here.
in a way, the Veerashaivas came and reversed the philosophy of
Tried to reverse. They could not succeed all. For example, you can talk to my wife, you can talk to anybody among Lingayats, even today. Menstruation taboo is there among Hindus. There is no such taboo among Lingayats.
They're progressive.
Progressive. And then women can adopt in their own right, which was given only recently to Hindu women. This has been there for 900 years. I can give you examples. 200 years back, Sirsangi Lingaraj was adopted by the mother, not the father, long after the death of the father. And he was a mini Raja. Okay, another Desai, he was brought to more than 100 years back by his mother, a widowed mother adopted him. So this adopted, Channamma, Kitturu Channamma, the dispute between the British and her arose on account of her adopting a child after the death of the ruler, okay, and by a widow, his widow. So that British didn't agree. I said, no, this is a Lingayat tradition. And that is allowed long before reformed Hindu law allowed it. So adoption rights they have, property rights they had. There is no menstruation taboo. They are allowed to practice.
So to cut the long
in all the religious the things, is a women who participate more than men. So equality of women, even today is continuing. Veerashaivas could do nothing about it. And this burying, Veerashaivas could not do anything about it.
To cut the long story short, sir, between the 11th century or the 12th century till now, because our discussion is past, present and future.
Right.
To sum it up, in about 800 years, a revolutionary started it. There was a strong philosophy. It went underground. It resurfaced. Confluence of other people coming in. It got modified. And today, where does it stand?
Exactly. That's where the question is. These people from the 16th century up to 18th century suppressed it so badly. All the original writings called vachanas were suppressed and hidden. They were not available to any person. In place of that, they went on putting all these Hindu Shaivism practices into Lingayat thing. Unfortunately for them, only in the modern age, in the 20th century, or I would say late 19th century, when the education started spreading among Lingayats, the palm script bundles kept in the puja rooms of Lingayat families, the palm script bundles kept in the old mathas of Lingayats, they started collecting them, they started reading them, they started interpreting them. And half a dozen collections of came through in the latter half of 19th century itself. And they became, they started spreading awareness about what is this, what is being done by these Swamis is one thing, what is written there is a different thing. So that started. In the 20th century, from the year 1921, it took a totally different turn. A leading lawyer, a first-class graduate from Government Law College, Bombay, a leading lawyer from Hubli, he dedicated all his lifetime going from house to house.
What's his name, sir?
F.J. Halakatti.
Okay.
He's a leading lawyer. And he did so many other things also. This BL Education Society was built by him. M.B. Patil's.
M.B. Patil.
He was one of the founders that time. Okay. It is not a private property. It is a community property. Anyway, so he went on disorderly collecting hundreds and hundreds of them. Then these are palm scripts which are very old ones, hundreds of years old, 500, 600 old, but they were intact. They were tied up and kept because people were illiterate. They couldn't read them. Many of them were in Hale Kannada, many of them were in medieval Kannada and all that. This man was well versed in this. He's a first-class grad from Bombay University, Deccan College. And then he studied in government, the law college in Bombay. Came back and started this. He was a good practitioner in law also, but he started this as a main work. Came from a highly educated family. And he went on publishing these vachanas, 1, 2, 3, how many? 150 collections he was able to do. And other people, professors joined him, C.C. Basavanada, another first rank holder from Bombay University in English and Kannada literature. He was a professor in KLE, one of the founders of KLE. He started writing. Then R.C. Hiremat, HOD of Kannada literature for a long time, Vice Chancellor of Karnataka University, he did in a big way. Thereafter Kalburgi, thereafter Raju, so many people.
Was this an attempt to separate or rather retain the original philosophy of the Lingayats?
Lingayat movement in the 20th century has been just that. Okay. Going back to the roots, forgetting all this Virashaiva corruptions and impurities, throw them out.
Okay.
Impurities, throw them out, go back to the roots.
Does this go
100 years.
For 100 years.
Last 100 years.
But your Vishwa Virashaiva Lingayata Mahasabha.
This is also 117 years.
So why there are so many cross stories, confusions?
See, cross stories because today BJP and RSS want Hindutva and Hinduized Lingayat, whereas Basavanna and Sharanas and original Lingayat don't want that to come here. That is as simple as that. So therefore they are supporting. Who are these Panchacharas?
We will get into the political relevance of it.
Yeah.
So as of today,
yeah.
If I have to sum it up, this 18% electorate that we talk about has got Lingayats and Virashaivas, more numbers in Lingayats and less numbers in Virashaivas.
Much less. Much less.
And then if you can just put it in a abridged version as to how many subsects are there in this Lingayat Virashaiva.
Yeah,
caste.
I can't say Virashaiva at all. The castes were brought back by Virashaivas during those 300 years. Then they went on classifying Lingayats in Hindu terms. They classified them, the ruling families of Lingayats, I called half a dozen of them. There are many more, hundreds of them. They put them in Kshatriya clan. These, the Virashaiva Brahmins who were going back to temples, doing archan and all that, they were brought back as Brahmins.
When did this started happening?
This started around 16th, 17th century onwards.
Okay.
17th century to 19th century for 200, 300 years, they virtually brought it back. The Vedic elements, they brought them back. Sanatana elements, they brought back.
So why I ask this? Because you have a Ganiga Lingayat,
yes.
you have various Lingayats.
I'll put them because they
superimposed the
existing
mosaic on this, and then they brought. So if I have to...
No, there are government orders on this.
Okay.
They first tried to classify Lingayat people into these 4 groups, Varnashrama group. And then they tried to say that lower groups are not part of Lingayat, Virashaiva. They removed them.
Okay.
The lowest means Shudra groups, who were the majority.
So there are two different sets of philosophies which is subscribed by this community. One, the Lingayats, who strongly feel that they are not part of the Veerashaiva clubbing,
Sure.
and they follow the Basavanna's philosophy.
Right.
And then there is also a sect which people subscribe to both Vedic practices
As well Basavanna.
as well Basavanna for certain benefits in the society.
Exactly, as simple as that.
Their political affiliations, their causes, and to further their prominence and relevance in the society, be it for the sake of power, institution, money, amongst other, and causes might be societal causes also. I'm not
Right.
going to. So there are two philosophies.
Two groups.
Two groups.
Two contrasting philosophies.
Yes, I agree. So,
And two sets of founders.
so one intended to be what it was, the other one was open to modification
Yes.
to be relevant
To adjust.
to the dynamics of the society where
Exactly.
we live today.
Right.
All right, sir.
Right.
So I broadly classified and understood this concept.
Yeah.
Sir, going further, the prominence, the political prominence of the Lingayats, it started in about late 70s, 80s, you could say, or 60s, you could say.
No?
When the Mysore state was there, you saw Okoligas becoming three chief ministers. They saw when the reorganization of states happened from just the Mysore state to Karnataka, with Bombay, Karnataka, Hyderabad, Karnataka merging. That is when we see the rise of the Lingayat Veerashaiva political leaders, political class for 38, 40 years. They go on to hold the control and grip over Karnataka politics.
You're talking about only recent, it's not true. It's what you said factually correct, but you have to go another 50 years before, more than 50 years before. You see, Lingayats and Gaudas were not inimical, they were not enemies, they were not opposed to each other. In the year 1818, when there was a big agitation in the state of Maharaja of Mysore, for reservation for so-called OBC, first time ever in the country, that's Mysore state. During that time, this struggle for reservation for the lower, poorer sections was started jointly by three groups, led by three groups. First is Gaudas, then Lingayats, and then Mamdans. These three groups together fought for that. And then historical event, Vishweshaya. Vishweshaya had to resign his Divanship on this account. Are you aware of that? He tendered his resignation to Divangiri only because Maharaja started supporting reservation for the poorer sections, and the Divan was saying, no, it will destroy administration. It should be on merit basis, it's not reservation basis. But Maharaja heard once, twice, thrice, persuaded Divan to change his views. He did not. Then Maharaja said, enough is enough. Then Divan resigned. And soon after that, Maharaja appointed Leslie Miller Committee in 1818.
So the first time the caste census happens in India.
No, caste census was there from 1871 up to 1931. Up to 1931, caste census was there. Therefore, we have accurate figures about how many, what's the percentage of Lingayats in Mysore state. Then I can tell you, in Mysore state, in the year 2000, this similar committee, 25% Okkaligas were there. 12% Lingayats were there. 12% Lingayats. 25% Okkaligas. It was, but they were not at loggerheads with each other. They fought together and they won. Leslie Miller Committee recommended a reservation of 75% of all government seats to backward classes. That time the word was not backward classes. It was called depressed classes. They were actually suppressed classes or repressed classes, but the word the Chief Justice Leslie Miller used was depressed classes. What is a depressed class? Everybody except Brahmins. 25% leave it for Brahmins and even 75% to all others, including Muslims. Today, Supreme Court is examining this. Why this OBC quota should be removed or not. This has been there since 1918.
But there is another argument that
That will seem to argue separately.
reservations cannot be given on religious basis,
It
but
is
only
not
on
given
caste
on
basis.
that. It is not given on that basis. I'll come back to that later. But what I'm now trying to say is this is a wrong interpretation or misinterpretation of the BJP people. I'll come back to that later. No, it's not now. All I'm trying to say is from 1818 and even before, three developments. One, Leslie Miller Committee and OBC reservation fight, they were together. Thereafter came, what is that? The Praja Congress Party formation. It was started by a Lingayat fellow by name Mysore Mahadevaya, M. Mahadevaya. So it was joined by Muslims, it was joined by Gaudas. They fought together. Mysore Praja Congress Paksha was built by these communities together. They were majority. 12% were 25 together, more than 36% of the population. What is that? 15 plus 20, 40% population. These two fellows only were there. So they built the party, it became there, and sometimes Gaudas were chairing the Praja Congress and Lingayats were chairing. And we have from Lingayats, I know their names also from year to year. That continued, and they were together. And then in 1947, when Maharaja relinquished his throne and merged with Union of India, he was appointed a Raj Pramukh, governor. Today is equal to Raj Pramukh, governor. That time, the Mysore state was
Formed.
started ruled by Vakaligas. K.C. Reddy,
Was the first chief minister.
Kadal Manjappa, Hanumantaya, all these people. Then they felt that with the unification, idea of unification started
On
around
linguistic
that time.
basis.
Yes, because as far back as 1924, the Congress conference in Belgaum, chaired by Gandhiji, at that point itself they started his reservation business. First discussion, Belgaum, 1924, AICC conference here chaired by Gandhiji. So that time it was already in the air that unification, linguistic based things and OBC all will be there. But unification of Karnataka first time raised here in Belgaum. So 1924 onwards, these people are a bit apprehensive. They knew that North Karnataka, Central Karnataka, Bombay Karnataka, including Madras Karnataka, all these things, they were having majority of Lingayats. So they were afraid. That time they started, if we join hands with all these people and if Karnataka...
They will become minority.
They will become. And they did become, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
They did become.
Yes.
Now, there's one more thing here. You touched upon that point. Now I'll bring you back there. Once these Lingayat communities were divided into caste groups by the Virishaiva, by whatever dynamics or deliberately by plan, these became, the lower castes were thrown out from the general social interactions. But the religious interactions did not cease. They were going to Lingayat. You go even today, you take untouchable or the Dalits people to Lingayat mats, Lingayat in boardings, Lingayat schools and colleges. They're there. Equal partners, even today. Most people, commentators, media persons, and people who talk about don't realize this. Why Lingayats? Is it only 18%? It's only a survey. Your figures are in 1831 census, you extrapolate much more than that. What is much more than? In the social interaction, you might have thrown out a SC component of Lingayat. But in political and in religious, they are very much part of Lingayat. If you take those segments also in electioneering, because their Ishtalinga is there, Vibhuti is there, belief in Vachanas are there, and they practice it better than mainstream Lingayats. They side with Lingayats. Therefore, 18% plus put together, it may be something like 30-35% population. So people don't understand these dynamics unless you go into the history of this.
Right.
So that is the crux of the point. Now after that, as you said, until 1956, three Vakal chief minister ruled it, and they were powerful in Rajasthan. But once reorganization took place,
from Mysore state to Karnataka.
Thereafter, next 17 and a half years, it's only Lingayats, continuously. These Nijlingappa, Bidijatti, Kanti, Virendrappa, they're all Lingayats. And except one, they're all from North Karnataka. Nijlingappa is from Central Karnataka, Chitradurga, Ballari. Again, not from, he was member of the Constituent Assembly, not from Mysore, from Bombay.
From Bombay.
Bombay, okay. So he was identified.
He's the only person who has been an MLA in two different assemblies, Maharashtra and Karnataka.
Right. So, and then what happened? It is Hanumantaya and Kuvempu, they sided with North Karnataka for a merger. That's how he lost his power. You know what, Hanumantaya, we must appreciate what he said. if I have to lose my chief minister, I will. But I want Kannadigas to unite. He's a great man.
On linguistic basis.
On linguistic basis,
should
it
be.
must be united. He had that foresight. You see, Hanumantaya, of all the chiefs of Karnataka, including today, he was a very intelligent man, very far-sighted man, and a very bold gentleman. Nobody can match his guts and saying things, calling spade a spade. He had that guts. And he opposed his own community. And Kuempu sided with him. Barisu Kandana Dindimava was written by Kuempu at that time. It was first time published by Prapancha, a Patil Puttappa from Hubli, not from any papers in South Karnataka, because that was against their political stand. Kuempu again joined the hands with the Hanumantaya, and they supported, and then how much effort he put in. He came to North Karnataka, addressed all these gatherings for unification, totally sided with them. Of course, as a matter of fact, we can say one of the reasons for his downfall was that. But he didn't bother about it. Yeah. So that's how unification began. That's how then bifurcation began. Now another phase begins later. That's with Yadurappa. I'll come back to it later.
Yes, sir. So it's a huge topic, so we'll have to, condense it. I want to come to the context in the recent past. So they became very powerful politically, and they were with the Congress, and then they sided with the Congress when Virendra Patil was punished. In just brief as to what happened at the time, what was the airport incident that a lot of these politicians talk about? These
No,
days?
airport is much later, but Lingayats left Congress even before that. Airport incident was Virendra Patil's second tenure, Rajiv Gandhi period. Long before that, in 1969, the original Congress party got split. Indira Gandhi came out, it became indicate was a syndicate. During that time, the AICC Adhyaksha was Nijalingappa. And
who's a Lingayat?
He was a Lingayat. And then there was a big lobby within Congress against Lingayats around that time. Because all that time, 56 to 69, including up to 71, they were all Lingayats. So there was a kind of hatred and jealousy built against Lingayats by all these lobbies, particularly Vakaliga lobby that time. They went and created a bias in the mind of Indira Gandhi, saying that Lingayats are anti-Congress and anti-Indira. And that is the reason Nijalingappa sided with the old Congress and removed you. So with that, Indira Gandhi decided to throw away Lingayats. And during that time, Devraj arrest became important. And he took the cudgels and then he took the leadership of the Congress party. He made it a single point agenda. Throw out Lingayats, throw out Vakaligas. Both he did very effectively. And that's why even in Karnataka...
So he actually championed the cause of the backward class. Is it why he's called the champion of OBCs in Karnataka?
Yes, that's exactly the reason. Okay, he brought out very, very far-reaching social, the political legislations. One is land sealing laws, tenancy laws, and implemented very rigorously. And land sealing laws hit only these two communities, the Vakaligas in the south and center, and the Lingayats other side. They're big landlords, big landholders. All those land holdings were lost. And Lingayat Matha has more than 1,000 today in existence. They also had huge extents of landed estates. They lost that also. Among the Vakaligas, there was no Matha that time. Now, Adichunjari Matha came up much later. But today, if that rule is applied, Adichunjari Matha will also lose quite a bit of land even today. But Lingayat Maths lost thousands and thousands of acres of land. They were left with only a few acres here and few acres there, but they still have lands, donated by the disciples. Anyway, so that is one. Then bonded labor abolition, then debt relief act. Okay, they were very progressive. I welcome them. Okay, and
you said that they left the Congress party once these Land Reforms Act were brought. Who did they side with at that time if they had left the Congress?
That is exactly the vacuum. They were helpless for the next 14 years. There was no alternative party in Karnataka. Congress was the only sole party. Janasangh was there, Namka was. It was called only Brahmins party. It had no virtual existence during that time.
But you had Janata Party, you had many...
No, there is no Janata Party. Janata Party started only in the 80s. Only in the 80s.
77 onwards,
No. Only 77. the emergency period, he started doing that. Post-emergency creation. Yes. During that emergency, the hodgepodge of parties came together, they formed Janata Party, Morarji Desai and all that.
So they suffered the onslaught and they were marginalized, they went underground without any political bosses.
Yeah, they were feeling very helpless. Lingayat politicians, Lingayat Mats, Lingayat, the households were feeling terribly helpless because their lands were being taken away, their debts were being liquidated, and their wealth was being confiscated. And then during emergency, quite a few access did take place in Karnataka also, not as bad as in North India. So the two communities who supported maximum, they were the dominant communities, numerically as well as otherwise. That's Vakaligas and Lingayas. That suppressed feeling and exploitation or other suppression remained very strongly in the minds of both the communities. So what did they do? When after post-emergency, the alternative party emerged, that's Janata Party, they joined wholesale. Now who were the two leaders that time? Devegowda and here Bommai. Not this Bommai, his father.
S.R.
Bommai. So who was leading them? A Brahmin. That is the Ramakrishna Hegde. Ramakrishna Hegde managed both the communities equally. And then he ruled Janata Party first time ever throughout.
So for a brief time you could say
6 years.
the consolidation of Lingayats and Vokaligas happened with the Janata Parivar. You had J.H. Patel, you had many of these Lingayat leaders. It's a different matter that the JD also, Janata Dal split into U and S. And
that's much later.
Then the Lingayats shifted to JDU.
No, I'll come back to that a little bit. See, Ramakrishna Hegde's rule gave them some balance, and twice they won elections. During he contested 3 times elections, Once, but a few months after first election with razor thin majority, next time total majority and all that. During that time, Devegowda started feeling that they are suppressing, Lingayats and Brahmins together suppressing Vakaligas. So his claims were suppressed. And he was not being heard in the party parlance. Ramakrishna Hegde was ignoring him. That frustration on the part of Vakaliga leader Devegowda led to the dissatisfaction, and then twice he was not given the chance to rule as chief minister. First time Bommai was given, next time J.S. Patel was given. During that time, Devegowda felt that it is high time for me to break away. That time, the Congress party split vertically. Lalu Prasad Yadav, Chandrasekhar, all this together with Devegowda, Ramakrishna Hegde and all those people on the other side. So there it became JDU, here it became JD. First of all JDU.
JDU and JDS.
First, JDS was formed around that time. JDS in Karnataka, nothing but Vakaliga's party and Devegowda's family party. Even then and even more or less even today.
You had Siddaramaiah, you had PGR Sindhya,
they had joined
also.
him. See, Siddaramaiah, all said and done, including PGR Sindhya, were products of Devegowda. Okay, these
all his proteges.
And he developed them. I mean, one must be grateful to him. Okay, they subsequently deferred and left him, came back and left to change the parties. A different story. But they were his proteges and he developed them. He gave them a lot of scope. Undoubtedly, it's a fact of history. Okay, coming back. Now, that time rivalries began. Okay, between Lingayats and Vakaligas. Lingayats and Vakaligas. Ramakrishna Hegde, J.S. Patel, they formed this group. And Siddaramaiah was thrown out from the party deputy CMship. He went over to the other side of Devegowda. So that is where division of Janata Party left no hope. And then by that time, they also finished the Ramakrishna Hegde's Janata.
Yes.
It was finished. After that, where should they go? There's again a political vacuum. Again, they bounced back. A little bit, but that is Devegowda faction after J.S. Patel.
Yes.
During this intervening period, Virendra Patil came back. After 17 years of lapse of time, he came back. He went on saying, look, we have committed blunders in the past. Trust me, I will not repeat those mistakes. And I will provide a very able leadership and a stable government. People trusted him. What was the result? In spite of the 6 years of continuous rule by Janata Party trouncing Congress bounced back and got 179 seats out of 224, leaving only 45 seats.
This is the highest for any political party.
Any time in the history of this state and country, in Karnataka, it is the highest ever score by Congress party under the able leadership of Virendra Patil.
179 seats.
Yeah.
they get.
Actually,
And
80, one man died.
And Virendra Patil is there now to take the helm of affairs. But what happens next? Keep watching NewsX as we continue this discussion in the part 2.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.